another edition of the Vicksburg Post High School Lowdown, our weekly football preview show. This week we're previewing week 2 of the high school season. St. Aloysius will be heading up Highway 25 this week to take on the Pisgah Dragons. About halfway to Starkville, it seems like, but really just at the far end of Rankin County. And St. Al really has some issues that they need to solve. Their run defense gave up 400 yards to a pretty good Cathedral squad. It's ranked number 1 in the AP poll this week. Pisgah, probably not as good, but a pretty similar team with a good speed running game, and that can certainly give them some problems.
Yeah, I mean, it's a tough loss last week to Cathedral at home, but like you were saying, Pisgah seems like they're a pretty similar team. It'll be interesting to see how they bounce back from that loss and see if that run defense could get any better. But they have those big defensive linemen. Let's see if we can put them to the task and get them going.
Right. And talking to Coach B.J. Smith, he said the line really that wasn't so much their problem because Cathedral wasn't really running inside the tackles. It was more when they bounced it outside. Their linebackers weren't getting in position. Their DBs were, I guess, getting dump trucked or were not getting in position. A lot of missed tackles. And if Pisgah can kind of get to that outside, they can cause some havoc out there. On the plus side, though, their offense, St. Al did break off some big runs of their own. They had 3 touchdown runs of 40 yards or longer, a couple hundred yards rushing of their own. So we could have a weird kind of ground-based shootout here this week.
It'll be interesting to see, definitely.
Yeah. And our only game in Vicksburg this week is Porter's Chapel and versus Hartfield Academy. Hartfield's a Class 2A team, a little bit bigger school, but team Porter's Chapel beat last year, and hopefully they can find a way to come out and get their second win of the year.
Yeah, PCA last week hanging on against Union Christian. That was really just a battle of attrition, really, with roster size. And Hartfield's going to be the same thing. They'll probably have a bigger roster, so it'll be up to PCA conditioning to be able to hang tough with those guys. But also on the offensive side of the ball, I mean, PCA moved the ball well last week, and QB Zach Morgan looked pretty good.
Right. And a bright spot for PCA too, even though, like you said, a battle of attrition, probably about half the team was going down with cramps at one time or another in that 100-degree heat. They had a lot of younger guys step up. They had 5 ninth graders, 1 8th grader. Saw a lot of playing time. I think between them they had about a dozen tackles. If they can get those guys really contributing, that's going to help them in the long run.
Oh yeah, it's going to be definitely good for depth, which is what they need, only having 17 guys on the roster right now.
And also, even though it's only week 2, this is one of those games that it's never too early to start thinking about playoffs when you're in the MAIS. 10 teams make the playoffs in Class A based on the divisions, and then you got 6 wild cards. And the way that works is you get more points for beating teams in a higher class. So if PCA can find a way to win this week, it's going to be something that's in their back pocket for probably come October when the playoff situation really starts to shake out. Vicksburg will be heading up to the Delta to take on South Delta, a Class 2A school up in Rolling Fork. A team they beat pretty easily last year, but Vicksburg coming off a loss, and they certainly have a lot to prove this week.
Absolutely. The no punting theory that Coach Marcus Rogers tested lasted about 5 minutes because they ended up punting. But South Delta, a team that, like you said, they beat last year, and one of the few teams in Mississippi that still runs a pro set. It's very traditional offense, very traditional defense. They run a 4-4 stack. Vicksburg should be able to handle these guys pretty easily, especially with the offense getting tweaked this week.
All right. In Vicksburg last week, what did you see watching that game that they kind of need to work on this week?
Well, the main thing is penalties and turnovers. The offense and the defense, they were both in the right spots. They were very well coached, and it was a well-called game. It was just the little things, the missed tackles, the penalties on 3rd down, miscues, things like that really hindered them from getting a statement win on Friday.
Right. And at this point in the season, too, a lot of that you'll find out this week. Is it a team issue that's something that's going to really plague them for weeks on end, or is it just something where they just kind of had a bad game? So week 2 is really an important week for a lot of teams, especially in that regard.
Absolutely. It's going to be interesting to see if they can shore up those miscues to where they'll be smoother.
And perhaps the best matchup of this week is Warren Central versus Callaway over at the North Jackson field off of I-220. Callaway beat Warren Central last year. Didn't get off to as good a start this year. They lost 12-0 to Forest Hill last week. But Warren Central certainly looked impressive against Terry in a 38-6 win in the Red Carpet Bowl.
They did. The defense was dominant. The running back core just really showcased its talent in last week's win. And talking with Coach Josh Morgan, he said one of the biggest things about this week's game is the unknowns. It's an entirely different Callaway coaching staff from a year ago, a Callaway team that went to North State last year in Class 5A. So the unknown, and then the size discrepancy. Callaway's a huge team, and he's talked a lot about having to provide mismatches with them to keep their hands off the ball.
Yeah, Warren Central, you mentioned the running game. I think they had 12 different players had at least one carry last week.
Wow.
So they got a lot of guys, a lot of playing time. Really, DJ Knight had over 100 yards, but really everybody's in that 20, 30, 40, 50 range. The defense, though, was certainly impressive. 42 yards on 34 offensive snaps was what Terry had, other than one long touchdown run. So that's kind of a carryover from last year.
Yeah, unbelievable defense. One of, if not the best in Mississippi, I would say. And we'll see if that can continue this weekend against Callaway.
Right. Thanks for tuning into this edition of High School Lowdown. For live scores on Friday night, check us out on Twitter at Vics Post Sports. That's VIX Post Sports. Or check out our website after the game for all of the full coverage. That's VicksburgPost.com. Or just pick up a newspaper on Saturday morning. That's on the newsstands everywhere. For Corey Uncle, I'm Ernest Boker. We'll see you next time.